Do you ever feel suppressed, stifled, like your mad genius wants to let loose? Welcome to Flow Unleashed. I'm Cameron Norsworthy, and this is your podcast for human performance. Often we don't find ourselves in flow, settling for suboptimal or enough, because we don't have the drive, the energy, the impetus to be more. This appetite is starved, not because we are not capable or logically know these heights are worth aiming for, but as a consequence of being suppressed. The pressure we all face in life is so potent that it readily suppresses how we might think, feel, and act. We all face a host of environmental and cultural pressures that subtly and sometimes explicitly shape our minds. Whether that be from corporate influence, values from our parents that we may feel the need to be our own, religious ideals, cultural norms, commercial messages to consume, or even political perspectives we should enact. While some of these messages are well-meaning, they often conflict with what our authentic self feels. And when we add this to the internal pressures we face from our upbringing, past traumas, expectations, and emotional and mental stuff that we haven't fully processed and secretly choose our bandwidth in the background, the pressure just to get through the day can be intense. And whilst we may be better at sidestepping these pressures at certain times, for the most part, they can be overwhelming. And as a result, we often conform to them. Why? Because it is exhausting not to. These external and internal pressures consume a tremendous amount of energy just to keep at bay, let alone overcome. In our exhaustion, we surrender, conform, and suppress our actualized self. Whilst the only thing more fatiguing from a spiritual and emotional point of view is living in the conformity straitjacket. This is often not realized until we are braced and belted. These pressures are constant and more often than not so overwhelming that we give in. The struggle to overcome them is too hard, so we abide by them, only to feel a sense of disconnection, meaninglessness, and meh. In short, we may not feel depressed, but we don't feel exuberant either. If continued, we inevitably become numb to what is going on and what we're doing and seeing. We sit in the seat of settlement and swim in the soup of suppression and suffering. In short, we languish and wonder why life feels dissatisfying and meaningless, even if achieving great things. So to unpack why, how, and what to do about it, I've invited Dr. Reef Kareem, who is a disruptor in the world of mental health and human behaviour. Dr. Reef is a trusted authority in human behaviour, interviewed by the likes of Oprah, Larry King, Anderson Cooper, Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil, Deepak Chopra, and many others. He is a double board certified medical physician, humanistic psychiatrist, addictionologist, and relationship therapist, who served as an assistant clinical professor for over a decade at the UCLA Semel Institute for Neuroscience. As an entertainer, Reef has hosted multiple network television shows, acted in big feature films and television shows, and consulted for big movies like The Bourne Identity. Dr. Reef Kareem believes we are living in a culture where conformity is king, validation seeking is the norm, and self-sabotage lurks beneath the surface of even the most successful lives. And he's not just calling it out from the sidelines, he's building the solution. As a double board certified psychiatrist, transformational scientist, entrepreneur and performer, and storytelling strategist, Reef has made it his life's work to help people break free from the scripts they've inherited and finally tell their own story. Reef's message is clear. You're not broken, just unexpressed. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be unleashed. And in this conversation, we explore the deep cost of living inauthentically, how meaning and creativity fuel mental health, and why expressing your essence in a media-dominated world is not optional, it's essential. So whether you're a coach, a creator, health professional, or simply someone who knows there's more inside you waiting to be released, this episode is your permission slip to go beyond conformity. Let's get into it.
Flow Unleashed.
Welcome to the show, Reef.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I don't get to meet many Reefs. I've actually called my son's middle name Reef, so it's nice to meet another Reef.
I am the oldest Reef that I know. I've seen quite a few Reefs that are like teenagers or, oh, it's a young baby named Reef. Okay, great. But I think I'm the oldest Reef that I know.
Yeah, trendsetter. Your parents.
Oh, yeah, I like being a trendsetter. It's a good thing.
I want to start with one of your quotes because it seemed to sum up a lot of what you do, and I really enjoyed it. You say, I could write you a prescription, but expanding your mind is way more effective. And I kind of laughed when I saw that, and I love the premise, but what does that mean to you?
I mean, it means a lot of things. That's what I like about the quote, is that it explains so much more than what's on the surface. So I can write you a prescription essentially means I can take away the symptoms that you're struggling with, no matter what discipline I'm in and what kind of pain you're in. I believe we have three types of pain. We have emotional pain, we have physical pain, and we have spiritual pain. And people will take medications or will self-medicate in order to relieve themselves of pain. And so physicians, we see, and health and wellness experts, we see people usually on their worst day or one of their worst days. They're usually suffering, and the easiest remedy for that usually works the quickest and makes us seem like we're superheroes as health and wellness experts or physicians, is to give you a medication. And we give you a medication. If we're lucky, it diminishes the symptoms or manages the symptoms or mitigates or completely gets rid of. And, everyone's happy, right? But the source, the underlying source of where that pain came from, regardless of whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, or spiritual pain, is still there. It's still present. If it was a mental health condition, if it was trauma, if it was a physical condition that still needs to be dealt with, if it's a spiritual bankruptcy condition, if it's never really developing a spiritual sense of self, whatever it is that was underdeveloped or traumatized or not worked out, regardless of what type of pain it is still there. So I've been on this journey as a healer and as a scientist and as a performer to find a way that I can best help people, best work with people, that's not just solely limited to writing you a prescription or a traditional medical way of viewing you as a disorder or as a patient or as a client who's only suffering. And, my background is in humanistic psychiatry. So I'm a medical physician, did, the internal medicine internship with some psychiatry, did some neurology and psychiatry, worked at the Semel Institute for Neuroscience, got a residency in humanistic psychiatry and then a fellowship in addiction, all that stuff. But the bottom line of that stuff is that I was trained a certain way to look at people. And it was to look at people in the way of disorders and symptom reduction and medication and therapeutic modalities. And you see treatment this way. This is the tools that I can work with. But the reality is I was raised Sufi. I have a pretty strong Eastern spiritual background connected with Western medicine. The toolbox is much bigger. I don't know how big the screen is right now, but it's far beyond the screen that I could show you right here. And because of that, why can't I bring in Eastern practices? Why can't I talk about cognitive flexibility, the ability to create and build your creative vision. Because look, it's if you can't see beyond your own circumstances, how are you going to change those circumstances? You need to be able to see beyond them. And that takes more of a creative mind. That takes an ability to expand the mind. So going back to the quote, if I can expand your mind and have you see beyond your current circumstances and have you move out of a state of cognitive rigidity, which so many people are stuck in right now, I can help you so much more than I could writing you a prescription.
Yeah, it's music to my ears. So often people feel a deficit, a problem, an issue, conflict, discomfort, and we go to the men in white coats to solve it. And like you said, there's a very linear solution there, and often a frustrating one because symptoms mediate for a little bit, but then the cause and further symptoms come back. And you talked about that kind of cognitive rigidity there. Why do we need these prescriptions in the first place? I mean, 4% of the world is on some kind of mental health prescription, and 20, the statistics are insane, from 10 to 25% of people having a mental health issue in their lifetime, and 5-year-olds even struggling with anxiety nowadays. Having been for years on end, having that front row seat to that, being a psychiatrist, what are some of the reasons you feel that we have this cognitive rigidity that doesn't allow the freedom we all crave and make us seek prescription in the first place?
Yeah, it is a wonderful question. I really want to take the time to go over this because I feel like so many people really misunderstand the concept of mental health. Mental health is not just pathology. It's not, you're suffering in some way, you're sick in some way. Our mental health is on a spectrum. And on one side of it, and one end of it from a polarity perspective is true pathology, to the point of suicidal and overdosing and hearing voices and seeing things and all sorts of other stuff, one end of that polarity. And on the other end is positivity and optimism and inspiration and coming alive and feeling so authentic and aligned with who you are and being truly energized. That's the spectrum. And mental health, your mental health lies somewhere in that spectrum. And the entire goal is to move toward, Maslow will call it self-actualization, Rogers will call it something else, all sorts of other philosophers will call it something else. But essentially it's, do I feel good about who I am? Do I feel like I have meaning in my life? Do I feel valued? Do I feel like I'm doing things that light me up? And do I come alive at the end of the day because I feel energized about who I am, where I am, and what relationships I'm in and what I'm doing in the world? And I don't think a lot of people do. And I feel that when we're uninspired, unexpressed with who we really are, unrealized in knowing this is it, like this is my life, but I was expecting so much more. And I thought by the time I was 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or whatever age that I'd be doing something that felt really meaningful. And I don't feel like I am. That's being unrealized. And when you feel that way, there are consequences. It's not just like, okay, I'm uninspired with my life, I'm okay. And I owned a treatment center in LA, in Beverly Hills here, and I owned it for almost 10 years and I sold it. I exited because I felt like I could do a lot of good on a much bigger scale than what I was doing at the time. But we helped a lot of people. And I built a core curriculum that initially was, I took some of the best people that I knew from my training at UCLA and a lot of other places, and I brought them into my center. And we had this process where there was an best of Western medicine, best of Eastern medicine, and a lot of integrative work for people that had either mental health conditions, drug conditions, relationship conflict, lifestyle conflict, just whatever difficulties they had. And people would come in a crisis, and that crisis would be either a financial crisis or a legal crisis or a health crisis or, whatever it is that they came in with. And through that crisis, we would help them into a second state. The second phase or that second state was a state of stabilisation. And that's usually where, if you talk about rehabs or you talk about mental health clinics or centers, that's where it would end. Then they would be like, okay, you're done, you're good, you can go live your life, you're free, you're done with the program, you're out. But I saw a subset of people, a large subset of people, not just the people that came to my center, but their family, their friends, their parents, their whoever, that this large subset really felt like, I got a job, I'm making money, but I'm not happy with my life. And I started asking around to friends and to family members and other people I knew, and this subset is huge in our culture. It's huge in the world. People that just, my life's okay. I'm doing all right, but there's got to be more than this. And that's when I realized, I was like, I think I know what to do with this group. And I brought in existential psychology. I brought in a lot of attachment and family work. I brought in a lot of trauma work, trauma repair. And I brought in a lot of cognitive flexibility. How can I make the mind more agile? Where can I bring in more mental agility to expand, again, that quote, expand someone's mind? And we did that for 90 days with some of the people in our program. And there was a huge difference in their outlook on life. And their outlook on life helped the recidivism rate, helped the rate of people that did not fall back into mental health conditions and crises and addictions and relationship conflict and whatever else. Because when you're living with more meaning, when you're living with more energy, when you feel like you're more alive, you suddenly start doing things that promote more of that. You do better things in your life. You make better decisions. You start hanging around with people that are better for you. You self-destruct less. You self-sabotage less. And you start questioning some of the things that you were doing before that put you into a negative state. And I was like, oh my God, this is like fantastic. I need to be spreading this message and this program on a much more expansive basis. So to the question, I think a lot of people post-COVID, a lot of people feel almost that learned helplessness, that they're living a life, they're doing okay, but there's just something missing and there's something's just off. And I feel like there's a lot of people in the world that are feeling that right now.
I was having an episode, not a personal episode, a podcast episode with Dr. Corey Keyes the other day, who the researcher behind Languishing, and talking very much about this meh place and how much of the population is actually within a place of languishing, where we're not depressed, but we're not feeling great either. It's a gripe with me where so many people seem to be happy with restoration, or the term you use, that stabilisation. And I can get it from a governance point of view in terms of resources and expenditure, and you just want to get people off negative clinical labelled problems in order to get them stop utilising financial resources of the state. But from an individual level, where does that dearth of not wanting to be our best come from? For what reason do you feel like the population is, I'm generalizing here, but for what reason do we feel that people aren't searching for their best?
Yeah,
but why is the appetite not there?
This really falls into the brand that I started, that you and I checked in on. So as a psychiatrist And as a performer, I'm also a performing artist. I've acted in a whole lot of movies. I'm Indian. I've done it in the Bollywood industry. I've done it in the Hollywood industry. Hosted shows. I've done improv. I've done stand up. I've danced, on big stages I was a professional swing dancer and salsa and all sorts of other stuff. And I just enjoy expression. And whether that expression is on a dance floor or it's on a set or it's on a stage or it's just helping somebody one-on-one, I just love the ability to help someone else express and for me to express. And as a performer and as a psychiatrist, I've always been very, very connected to the word madness. And, some people that are listening right now or watching right now are probably like, madness? What do you mean madness? How is madness helpful? Because on one side, imagine it's a coin, and on one side of madness is what we traditionally think of madness: chaos, craziness, overwhelm, unstable, just not feeling good. It's a bad thing. But the other side of madness is creativity, vision, being visionary, out of the box thinking, innovation, imagination, pulling yourself out of the stagnation, the quicksand of the status quo, the pressures that are out there from societal pressures, cultural pressures, community pressures, parental pressures, attachment pressures, all the pressures out there that you, me, and everybody listening to this right now face. We all face that stuff. And in my mind, those pressures are getting more and more potent because, and I know this because of the work that I do, and my work is also in neuroscience. There are three types of energy. There are three influences of our energy. So some people will call that innate energy in us chi. Some will call it flow. Some will call it life force. I call that energy within us madness because it's not all good. When you think of chi and flow and, hey, it's good, it's great. I just want more flow, man. I want to live a flow life. I want to do this. I want to do that. And in theory, it sounds great. But the reality is we're humans and we can waste our energy. We can exhaust our energy and we can be destructive with our energy. That's why I like madness. And it makes a lot of sense to me. And I built my entire brand and my entire life's work off of the word madness. I help people master the madness that influences us, master that precious energy inside of us. Now, there are three influences to our madness. There is the environment, the madness out there, which is what you and I are talking about, why so many people feel fatigued and exhausted and they don't have the appetite, as you said, it's a good word, the appetite to change their life or do something or feel more meaning or feel better because the pressure of that environment, corporate influence, parental pressures, people wanting you to live life the way they want you to live it, religious pressures, which are often well-meaning, but sometimes start conflicting with other things we feel inside, community pressures from politicians to vote a certain way, to buy things that they want us to buy, to believe what they want us to believe. And not to get into conspiracy theories too much, but look, tech companies, casinos, food manufacturing companies, they have neuroscience labs studying our reward circuitry to see what salt and sugar products are going to get us most hooked to our reward. What tech gaming, what tech social media interactivity is going to get us most hooked onto that the casinos, what games are going to get us most hooked. So the reality is we have this architecture, this neurocircuitry that can get hijacked. And when it gets hijacked and we get distracted with other things, be it to buy, consumer buying, neuromarketing, whatever it is, we lose sense of what we want. We lose our voice. We become unexpressed. We fall prey to conformity thinking. We fall prey to living our life for other people. And I can tell you, I am the poster child of that. And that's why I can talk about it with such certainty and maybe emotionality, because, you know, on the day I was born, my dad made an announcement. He was like, everyone gather around, gather around. I've decided he will be a doctor. Okay, very good. And then there was like, everyone was clapping, and it was like a big moment because he had determined my life. He would creep up to my crib late at night. He'd be like, doctor, 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 like subliminal messaging. Every birthday, I didn't get Legos. I got a medical gift. For your 5th birthday, we got you a portable cardiac defibrillator. Use it on your classmates who are having heart trouble. You know, it was like every Halloween, they dressed me up like a different type of doctor. You know, like they were only going to help me pay for college if I was pre-med. Like it just was over and over, inundated and inundated. And, you know, it's funny now, but at the time it was brutal because I didn't want to be a doctor. And there was so much shaming I remember my mom was folding laundry, and, you know, I was in front of a camera, one of those old school, really big, like movie cameras back in the day. And I was trying to do like Saturday Night Live sketches. And my mom would just like watch, and she would look at me as she was folding laundry, and she'd be like, you know, you're not funny. That is nothing funny about you. In fact, the only thing that would be funny is if you didn't go to medical school. That would be hilarious. Howdy, har, har. And, you know, and it was all about medical school. Everything was about medical school. And it got so bad. I won't go into the whole story, but it got so bad that they had an intervention on me. And it wasn't because I was doing drugs. They hired a drug interventionist because they assumed I must be on drugs if I didn't want to go to medical school. This is the ideal Indian career intervention, right? Your son doesn't want to go to medical school. And all these random people who I didn't know were telling me how much they loved me and how my life had gone astray. And I was like, this is the dumbest thing. Dad, seriously? Like it was just totally ridiculous, but it was their way of expressing love and safety in an immigrant culture that, hey, we're really worried about you because you're thinking about doing something that we don't feel comfortable with because we don't understand it, and we won't be able to help you with this. You'll be on your own. So instead, we're going to try to do everything we can for you to enter a career we do understand so that we have a better sense of who you are. And that was the goal. And it got to the point where, I'll just say it, the last thing my dad said, like I was ready to walk out of that intervention. I thought it was like ridiculous. But the last thing he said is, I'm ready to walk out. I'm getting my bag. I'm getting all my stuff, and I'm heading out the door. And he's like, if you don't go to medical school, you will be like a little island in the middle of the ocean. And there is nothing on this island. No mother, no father, no love, no money, no nothing. And the big waves are crashing on this island over and over and over again. And every single day, the island is sinking just a little bit at a time, little bit, until one day, there is no island. So my dad was basically telling me I would cease to exist. They would completely cut me off. Wow. I was disowned. I was like, no love, no this, no, and who knows if they would do it. But at the time, it felt like I either live for somebody else, my family, and gain the love and the family, or go at it on my own and lose my family. And I decided at the time, I'll martyr my life. Okay, cool. I will live for someone else. So whatever dreams I had, whatever, you know, we all have dreams, right? Whatever the thoughts were that, ooh, I could do this, that would be amazing. You put them on the back burner and you go, okay. And the thing about medicine is you learn such wonderful things. I mean, I'm not anti-medicine. I learned some great, I mean, what I learned was incredible. It was incredible. And some of the experiences you have are incredible. But I felt like that was not necessarily the headliner of my life plan. The headliner was not, I'm going to look at insurance reports and I'm going to practice medicine under the bureaucracy and all the other stuff that goes along with practicing medicine. And the focus is going to be on prescriptions and this and that and all, the rest of it. Now, over time, it's taken me a couple decades, but over time, I've been able to adjust and kind of find my niche. And that goes back to madness. So there's the environment madness that influences us and wipes us of our energy, exhausts us of our energy, puts us in fatigue, mental fatigue as well as physical fatigue, when we're wasting so much of our energy on other people and other people's wants and needs and bias. We also have something called our mind madness. Our mind madness is our generational trauma, our mental health issues, our attachment issues. It's like a phone, right? It's like a phone that is constantly eating up battery because you have too many apps open. It's constantly running and exhausting our battery. And when you have mind madness that's going unchecked, you have trauma that's unprocessed. You haven't done the work yet in personal discovery. You're dealing with so much stuff that still needs to be worked on about you. That is exhausting a lot of your energy. And when you don't have the energy because it's all being sucked up by the environment or sucked up by the mind madness, then you don't have the energy for the third type of madness, which is the soul madness or soulful madness. And that soulful madness is the essence of who you are. It's that personal discovery. It's that inner knowing. It's the inspiration. It's the curiosity. It's the discovery of meaning, of purpose. It's what lights you up, what makes you come alive, your passion, all that stuff that's really hard to explain until you see it. But if you see somebody who's truly come alive and is really authentic and aligned with who they are, it's contagious. It is 100% contagious. You are so enamored and attracted to that person in an energetic way that you can't stop being around that person. And you want to work with that person. You want to be around that person. It's alluring. It's exciting. And that's somebody who's operating from the place of soulful madness. And that's what I help people do. I help people turn down the volume of the environment, manage the mind so it's not taking up all that battery, and turn up the volume within themselves.
Firstly, thanks for sharing that story. And I really like how you carved up what you call madness, because there's so much there in what you said that I'd love to pick up on. And yeah, I guess what I'm hearing is that there's this inner desire to express. And when that gets suppressed, we shy away from our true self and we become stagnant, we become stiff, depressed, and perhaps leads to that loss of appetite that we were talking about and potential stream of mental health related issues. How did you untap that expressionist inside you? How did you remove that suppression from all the weight of the family shame and all the cultural and environmental pressures or madness that you might have had?
Facing the pain. I'm sure there are definitely people that are listening to this that can, that would respond to this, that would feel it. It is not easy to face the pain. I always feel like the way we transform in life, the way we change in life, the way we improve our circumstances is we're either pulled in by a vision that is so strong, an idea, a concept, a possibility that is so strong, we just can't stop thinking about it. We're just like, that is what I want to do. That is who I want to be. that is what I'm looking for. And that possibility is so strong that it pulls us in, or we're pushed away from what we're currently dealing with by the pain. And it's so painful to be who we currently are. It's so painful to deal with what we're currently dealing with that we just can't do this anymore. We have to change something. We have to transform. We have to take that extra step. We have to do something to get out of this current circumstance because it is too painful. And for me, it was both. It was, I still remember it. I was at my treatment center, and I had had a car accident where I was at a light and some guy was texting and he ran to my car, and I had a small, like 1 millimeter disc herniation in my lower back. And I'm sure some of it was the pressure of running a center. Like there's financial pressure, there's, medical pressure, there's all that. But my doctor, my back specialist, told me that the 1 millimeter disc herniation turned into a 10 millimeter disc herniation. And that's much more significant. And I couldn't get out of bed, and I felt like I was 80 something. I felt like, I literally said to a buddy of mine, he came to my house and he was like, "Hey, you all right?" And I was like, I mean, I didn't do everything I wanted to do with my life, but I did some good things. Like I was reflecting on my life like I was 90, and it was all in the rearview mirror. And it was just because I was so exhausted of my mental energy. I was so exhausted. The pain just took up everything. And so I had that physical pain, and the doctor said it was very much stress related. And I think the stress was not just day-to-day stress from the treatment center. I think a lot of it was the stress of suppression, and the stress of being unexpressed, and the stress of knowing there was so much more for me out there than what I was doing and not being able to do anything about it. That was stress. That stress of suppression is a serious deal. And that led to emotional pain. And then it was the pain of like waking up every day and not feeling like there was anything good that was going to come of that day. What fires am I going to put out? What am I going to do that I don't enjoy doing? What more do I have to deal with today? And it was waking up with anxiety, not sleeping well. It was all of that. And that led to spiritual pain. And that spiritual pain is probably the worst because it's this deep gnawing pain that it's not like you're going to do anything like bad, but it's more just this, man, I wish I could snap out of this current state I'm in, but I'm going nowhere right now. And I feel lost and helpless, and there's nothing I can do about it. We have such agency over our life. We could change things in a second. But when you're stuck in that state of conformity, that state of stress, that state of whatever that is, you don't see it. And that's what I mean by creative vision. You don't see it. You don't have the energy, the madness energy that I believe you need to change your life, to transform your life. It's exhausted, and you don't have the vision to do anything about it. So for me, it was knowing there was something else for me out there, and that I couldn't take the pain anymore. And the last piece of it is, you mentioned the cultural aspect of it. I knew if I made a big change in my life, my parents were going to, whether it was disown me or stop talking to me or just like, I knew it was coming. And it was like, I related to the Peanuts cartoon. Remember like Pigpen? So you'd have Charlie Brown and you'd have Lucy and Snoopy. And there was this character, Pigpen, that constantly had this black cloud over him all the time. It was like a storm cloud that wherever he went, there was a storm cloud that went everywhere he went. And I felt like that. I felt like, okay, I don't want to face that storm cloud. I don't want to face it because I know it's coming. And I finally reached a point where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I have to do something different with my life. And I've helped a lot of people. I've healed a lot of people. And I don't want to say I've done it at my own expense, but I haven't taken care of myself in the process. I was married to my work. I had no, I didn't have a loving relationship. I didn't have a child. I didn't have a family. I didn't have anything because I had no room for it. I had no room and no energy for it. And I finally decided to do something. And you know, what really instigated it is I went to Bali, and I'm not going to tell you this story, but a long story. I ended up meeting the royal family in Bali, and I met with one of the main prince in Bali, and he introduced me to his spiritual healer. And the spiritual healer was talking to a few people. And when he got to me, he literally just said one line. One line. That's all he said. He was spending all his time with this woman before me. And I was like so excited he was going to spend all his time with me. And he said one line, but it was the line I needed to hear. He said, sometimes destruction can be a good thing, especially if you were built on a faulty foundation. And then he literally mic dropped and like walked away. And,
Wow.
yeah. And I wrote it down. I looked at it on the plane ride home, and I kept thinking about it. Like, destruction can be a good thing. And that's when I realized, like, my ego was being fed by being an assistant professor at a big academic center. My ego was being fed by being the CEO of this treatment center. And I did truly help a lot of people, and I feel really good about that. But that was not my life's work. And if I was ever going to open up space for my life's work, for what was really going to motivate me and inspire me and be mine and be my contribution, not in a narcissistic way, but in a purposeful way, in a meaning way, what could I contribute to the world that will help a lot of people and generate great impact, not just one person at a time? Then I was going to have to destroy some things in order to make room for other things. And so I sold my treatment center. I left academia, and I told my parents, and they stopped talking to me. They did exactly what I thought they were going to do. And it got so bad that, you know, my mom and I, the last kind of fight that we had before they kind of cut me off, I was like, you know, we were having a big argument, and I was like, Mom, I feel like you don't accept me for who I am, you know? And without any hesitation, she was like, I don't accept you for who you are. You're not what I expected you to be. And then that was it. She didn't say a word after that. Closed the door. I left. And, you know, I'm not a crier at all, outside of maybe like movies like The Notebook. I don't know. But I'm not a crier. And that was the first time I cried in like 10, 12 years on the way home. And it shook me up for a little while, but it also relieved the cloud. The pigpen cloud, that dark cloud went away because my biggest fear came true. She had told me, I don't accept you for who you are. And I was like, these aren't bad choices that I'm making. I'm choosing to be happy. I'm choosing to live a life that's more meaningful. I'm choosing to still help people. I'm choosing to do all this stuff, but I just want to do it my way. I just don't want to do it the traditional way. What's wrong with that? And that's when I realized that like nothing I was going to do was going to make a difference to them. They have that cognitive rigidity. They're stuck in it. That doesn't mean I need to be stuck in it. And if there's anything I would say to your viewers, your listeners, it's that. Just because somebody else is stuck in cognitive rigidity, just because somebody else doesn't have the creative vision that perhaps you do, just because somebody else isn't seeking more meaning in their life, doesn't mean you have to. You can snap out of that. You can move out of that. You can develop the vision and the courage and the conviction to go a different way. And that's what I did.
Yeah, wow, brave soul. I barely know you, but I'm extremely proud of you. Sometimes you need to break an egg to make a cake, and
Yeah.
I'm sure we can all relate to that, right? We've all got a level of suppression that we're facing right now, you know, that we can self-reflect on and go, wow, if I remove that cloud above my head, you know, what would life look like? And for some people that might be sexual suppression, some it might be emotional suppression or mental suppression. You know, our energy is suppressed in different ways, and there's very little harder suppression to be brave enough to face than that spiritual sort of family of origin pressure there. So that's that's pretty amazing.
I would ask anybody who's thinking about this kind of stuff to go, you know, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I mean, for me, it was when it's unconscious, it seems so scary. It seems so scary. It's like, I can't do that. Well, no, I don't want to do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. But when you make what's unconscious conscious and you go, okay, I've got a lot of fear about doing this. What is the absolute worst thing that could happen? My family could disown me. My family could not accept me. My family could abandon me. Okay, well then what would I do? It's a cognitive behavioral technique called play the tape. Mm. So if I play the tape and I'm like, okay, well then what would I do? I'd probably rely more on my friendships. Okay, so if I'm with friends who accept me for who I am and who are there for me, and I don't spend enough time with them, what will happen? I'll probably put myself in a more optimistic, positive. I'll miss my family. I'll miss, you know, whatever family means to me. But there was also a lot of negativity in my family. Maybe I need this time to heal. Maybe I need this time to repair some things. Maybe I need more optimism and positivity in my life for a while. And then when I'm strong enough, I'll go back, you know, but then I'll be in a different place. And that's exactly what happened. You know, I didn't talk to them for, I don't know, 12 months, 18 months. I don't remember what it was. They would have, I'd leave a message for my mom and, you know, it was like Christmas time or something. And she'd leave me a message back. We had the best time, you know, celebrating, you know, without me, celebrating and doing all this stuff. And it hurt. But eventually I got strong enough to be able to handle it. And initially, you know, and it helped that when I was strong enough, I got in a great relationship and I had room for it. I had energy for it. And I had energy to find a good person in my life. And, you know, she's super, like, just super good to me and knew kind of what I was going through and was really supportive and helpful. And now I have a 4-year-old boy and he's great. And I have a great relationship with him. And it was because, you know, I was able to create a family of my own and get married and do all the rest of it because I made room. Then I got strong enough and then I faced the family again. And we just don't talk about certain things. And if something comes up that's negative, I'm like, you know what? That's your opinion on stuff. That's great. I respect your opinion, but let's talk about my 4-year-old. And he'll come and then we'll play and it'll be a different conversation. But I couldn't do that till I was strong enough. I had to get strong enough first.
Do you want to help others unleash their performance? Do you want an internationally recognized accreditation to stand out amongst the crowd? Or do you want the playbook I use every day when helping professionals to be their best and find their flow when it matters most? If this sounds interesting, join others who are training to become a high-performance coach. We are on a mission to train a fellowship of expert practitioners and coaches to work with us and help make the world a better place. To find out more, go to flowcoachingfederation.org and check out the Flow Coach accreditation today. I'm curious, with your work in addiction, we talked about that suppression and that madness around us and that the pain that comes from all of that. And with addiction, there's different, I guess, approaches, from a disease approach to a psychodynamic approach. What do you feel is the root cause of that addiction? Do you feel it is different for horses for courses, or do you feel that this suppression and this lack of expression and lack of authentic purpose and energy is a major part of that process?
In my work in addiction, I did a fellowship at UCLA, a 3-year fellowship. I ran treatment centers. I spoke for a lot of, I've done research in addiction. I've published a lot. I've written book chapters. I've definitely I've talked about addiction on CNN regularly. I was on Oprah talking about addiction. I've done a lot in that space. And the more work I did, the more complex addiction seemed to me, because I do believe unprocessed trauma is a huge part of addiction. I do believe that, Gabor Mate is a colleague of mine, and I do believe that ask where the pain is, not necessarily what the addiction is. It's like, where's the pain coming from? Where's the trauma coming from? I do believe very strongly in that. I also think there's a genetic predisposition. I'm not discounting that. I also believe that there's something called neuroadaptation that happens, that I won't go into the science of it, but things happen with different, peptides and corticotrophin releasing hormone and a bunch of other neuropeptides and things like that make you, if you are vulnerable to an addiction from the perspective of environment, from the perspective of trauma, from the perspective of genetics, from a lot of different perspectives, your level of despair might start here, but with neuroadaptation, it like drops further down. So when you don't have the behavior or the drug, the chemical, the substance, because behavioral addiction is massage the same neurobiology, just with a different potency. When you don't have that, maybe the average person feels this much despair, but you're going to feel a lot more despair. Your baseline of feeling will get much worse. So I do believe that there's a biological component to it. I don't think it's all trauma based. I don't think it's all environmental based. And I also believe that.
Sorry, before you go on to your next part, just to double click on the neurobiology, can you explain that a little bit further? Because I think that's quite important and quite fascinating. Why would someone's baseline drop? Is it their relationship to dopamine, or what's going on
there? The whole concept of neuroadaptation is very complex. So basically we have a reward circuitry in our mind, in our brain, and it's natural. It's set up for the propagation of our species. We have a natural reward system. It's the ventral tegmentum, nucleus accumbens, prefrontal cortical area. Dopamine is one of the main chemicals for anticipatory, motivational aspects of it. There is emotional dysregulation that happens. There's motivation that comes from our orbital frontal cortex. It's complex. There's a lot going on. But essentially, different drugs of abuse and different behaviors of abuse, we used to call it, will hijack that circuitry. But essentially what happens is it's a synthetic or endogenous way of, whether it's a chemical from the outside or it's something that taps into our systems that are already there, it can cause us to lose control of our normal system. And that normative system either gets expanded because like methamphetamine or cocaine is going to access that system with dopaminergic tone that's much higher than anything we would do in a natural way. Even behaviors, sex addicts, people that have disordered gambling, even shopping addiction, there's studies that show, dopaminergic tone that's not consistent with their normative levels. So some of it is that, but it's a big mixture of a lot of other stuff as well. Like I said, trauma, especially unprocessed. And neuroadaptation, I think they're still trying to figure out like dynorphin levels and corticotropin levels and just releasing hormone. And then like there's other levels of peptides that just change. They fluctuate. It can happen in obesity. It can happen in addiction. It can happen in other chronic diseases where it's much harder to stop once you've started if you have this vulnerability for it, because you feel so much worse when you don't have it in your system, or when you're not actively pursuing the behavior or the chemical or the substance. And that's why, you'll tell people, I don't know, the old school days, just say no, or don't do it, or pull yourself up, or do, this, that, and the other. And it's so hard for people because it's not that easy. There's unprocessed stuff happening. And like I said, at the end of my treatment center, we would spend 90 days working with people on existential work and cognitive meets creative work, and expanding their vision or developing more meaning in their life and doing other stuff. And I do think if you don't have any meaning in your life and you're not able to connect on a deeper level with people, you will suffer. And lots of people have heard of the rat study, the rat park, and how rats would go to the cocaine more than they would the other food or the other liquid or the other water. But you take that rat and you put that same rat in a loving environment where they could hang out with friends and do fun things, and they didn't do it. So bonding and community and belonging and having meaning and being inspired and all of that stuff that I'm talking about, that madness switch that you make, that stuff's really important, because it can offset a lot of the negative aspects of an addiction or a mental health condition, or just feeling unhappy and dissatisfied with your life.
Was that meaning and social, relational aspect the part you were going to go on to before I interrupted you?
Yeah, I feel like that is such an important component of feeling like you're feeling energized in the world, and feeling you're coming alive in the world. And that is that soulful madness. That is that creativity and that inspiration and that energy. And I can't tell you the number of people that have exhausted it or don't even know it's there, or are completely disconnected to it. I have this exercise I do that I created, and it's part from my Sufi background. It's part from neuroscience. It's part from existential psychology. And it's called Soul CV. And we all have our resume, our CV, and we put our objective, and we put our work experience, and we put our goals, and we put our special skills, and why do we do it? We do it to attract somebody to look at it and give us a job, hire us based on this stuff. And I was like, what if we took that and we wrote a CV about when we did something soulful, when we explored our unconscious to do something that defined who we are different than everybody else? What if we could explore our unconscious and write down what experiences have we had that have defined us? What have we done that's given us clues to what would be meaningful in us? So I take people on this journey, and as they fill out their own soul CV, and it's really been enlightening for a lot of people to, I guess, gain more clarity and gain more understanding of who they are beyond what they're told, beyond what other people expect of them. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop, is a famous Rumi quote. And I feel like, yeah, we all have this collective energy that we share, but we still are individual drops in the ocean. And what defines your drop? What makes you matter? What makes you different? And I think that should be celebrated. I don't think it should be narcissistic, but I think it should be celebrated in our originality. And that originality often leads us to finding what's good in our life and what lights us up.
So how would you help someone develop their own story and tell it and live it and be authentic within their day-to-day expressions with it?
That's a lot of what I do. It's a great question. And I spent quite a while figuring out, I came to another realization after all this stuff. And I was like, what is my story? Is it doctor? Is it living my life for other people? Is that my story? Is my story unexpressed performer? Is that my story? Is the intervention my story? Is that my, like, and I was trying to figure it all out. And then I realized I don't really know my story. And so I started really exploring. And what I mean by story, I don't just mean like what are your biggest traumas or your celebratory moments. I mean, what's the big picture of you that you can share with others when you tell that story that can either inspire them, enlighten them, empower them, wake them up, bring in some level of wisdom to them, gain insight? What is it that you can share? And I realized my story is realizing how people can develop personal discovery through this concept of madness. And it takes somebody who has the medical background, the psychological background, the philosophical background, the neuroscience background, and the performance background in order to find that expression within me. That was my story. And now, how can I help other people to do the same? Because part of it is understanding who you are, and that's existential, and that's psychological, and that's philosophical. Some of it is overcoming self-sabotage and self-destruction and understanding the neuroscience behind why it is you do what you do and how you can stop that, how you can minimize the exhaustive energy that's happening because you're stuck in this cycle of mental health dysfunction or not looking at your life in a way that you could, in a non-expansive way. So some of it is medical and neuroscience based, and some of it is performance based, because you need to not only learn how to discover your story and write your story, but you need to learn how to tell your story. And in this time right now, in this culture where it is a completely media dominant culture. I mean, let's be real. If you want to attract new opportunities in your life, I don't care what business you're in, whether you're in health and wellness or real estate or sports or whatever. Yeah, your skill is a big part of it. But if nobody knows you or nobody knows your skill, if you don't know how to convey your story, I mean, listen, you could invent the cure for cancer, but there is so much misinformation out there. There is so much mistrust out there. There is so much noise out there. There's so much overstimulation out there that if you don't know how to convey who you are, what you do, and what you're offering, your product, your solution, your big idea, if you don't know how to convey that in a way that inspires people to take action, where they emotionally feel something, you're just going to get lost in the noise. And people are going to think you have misinformation, or that you're a quack, or that you can't be trusted, or you're just noise, or even worse, you're going to feel invisible because you're going to go on social and put something out there or create some content and feel like nobody's even watching or listening or responding to it or commenting on it. I have two businesses. I have a personal business, like personal development, which is Master the Madness. And I have a professional training program, which is called Mad Genius. And I help people tap into their mad genius, which we all have, which is the most distinctive, disruptive, and expressive version of us. So when you ask that question, how do you help people tell their story? I literally built a business around how do I and my team help people discover their story and tell their story and apply it to business and relationships so that they attract more business. They can scale their business. They can put their message out there in a much more disruptive way where people are compelled, their desired audience is compelled to take action, to work with you, to buy from you, to believe in your ideas and your messaging.
Yeah, well done. I love how you're sort of flipping the script to madness. Like with ADHD, we often see it as a negative thing as opposed to a creative asset. And our madness is full of energy and creativity. And as you said, we can use it to disrupt. And We can use it to innovate, and we can use it to lead. And you talk about there is that mad genius inside us all, and successful people know how to activate it. By that, do you mean understanding our story and living our story through that exuberant, energized self?
That's part of it. It's knowing our story. The other part of it is permission. It's permission to explore the unexplored parts of us. It's permission to let out a little of the crazy side of us. It's permission to think in a more divergent way. Permission to come up with out of the box ideas that some people are going to say are crazy. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm going to tell you that I think we're all a little crazy. We all are. We all have something about us that someone else would think is off and is different.
The only people that aren't are the people we don't know very well.
Exactly. Exactly. We all have a divergent element to us. And I'm not saying we're all neurodivergent. Maybe we are, but we're all a little crazy. And for some people, it's the way they manage relationships. For some people, it's power. For some, it's personality stuff. For some, it's lacking in self-esteem. For some, it's crazy, the way we talk. There's something in everybody. So the question is, do you hide it? Do you manage it? Or do you explore it? And I'm not saying do something that hurts other people or do something illegal or that, or, I'm just saying, what if you explored your unconscious? There might be some dark stuff in there, but there might be some gold mine ideas in there. There are, in every single person listening, I will say this. You have had a time in your life when you came up with a really good idea for whatever it is, and it probably wasn't the right time to explore that idea. Maybe some person made fun of you for it. Maybe nobody responded to it. Maybe it was this great moment and then the moment disappeared because there was some drama that occurred in someone's life or your life. Those great ideas get stored somewhere. And unless you explore the unconscious, you'll never know. So I just tell people, give yourself permission to explore the unexplored parts of you and to give yourself permission to think differently and not be afraid to be seen as a little off or a little divergent or a little crazy, because it's those crazy people that, they come up with those innovative ideas. They make things better or they make things that are new because they were able to think differently than the status quo.
I'd love to find an example contrary to this, but I think it's very difficult to find our diamond, right, or live our dharma without doing that. Otherwise, we just fall prey to those cultural pressures and the environmental pressures and the stream of pressure that's sort of pushing us in one direction. Unless we have that soul searching, it's very difficult to really tap into what our soul or spirit or inner self is really desiring to kind of unfold and actualize.
Yeah, and I think you said that very well. And it's so easy to tell somebody, well, just go soul search. Just come on, just go in your room and soul search for a while, or go out in nature and soul search. It's not that easy. It sounds a lot easier than it is. And that's why I built Master the Madness, because I was like, can I build a framework and a platform that's rooted in science, that's rooted in philosophy and spirituality, that's also rooted in psychology, that can help people with personal discovery, from learning their story, telling their story, and exploring their unconscious, amongst other things. And if I can build that, I think it can help a lot of people. So that's essentially what that program is.
Yeah. And please, if you're listening, check out Master the Madness experience. I just want to touch on one more point before coming to an end that you talked about earlier around when we communicate It's easy to get lost in this world of just dishing out information, dishing out content. But the ones that stick, the ones that stand out amongst others in our communication is when we make other people feel, when we make other people emotionally respond to what we're doing and saying. Can you elaborate on that? Because I think that's just a really important skill for any professional to embody.
For anybody who's creating content in social media, for anybody that's doing a TED Talk, for anyone that's doing keynotes, that's a speaker, that's a personal brand, that's a real estate agent, that's a health and wellness professional, that's anybody, as you said, that is out there sharing their message, sharing their ideas, and sharing of themselves. Our brain, again, to get into the science a little bit, because that's how I view the world, through philosophy and science, our brain prioritizes emotional driven memories over informational driven memories. So that means I can talk to Cameron and I can tell him, hey, I'm going to give you this pearl of wisdom and I'm going to share this informational concept with you. Okay. And to make oversimplify your hippocampal memory circuit, right? It'll light up this much. But I could also tell Cameron a story. And inside that story is vulnerability. There's a hook. It's exciting at moments. It's difficult at moments. I'm actually like having a little bit of a hard time telling the story. And it lights up his emotional circuitry. And the basal ganglia now is connected to the hippocampal circuit for that memory. And the informational memory went to here. The emotional memory is highly prioritized, way more than the informational memory. So if you are able to share content, to share hooks, to state whatever you need to state, whatever you need to say to people, whatever industry you're in, and you can add some emotionality on your end, vulnerability, humor. Maybe you're pissed off and you're just angry about something. You're ranting about something. If you can add emotionality to what you're saying, and even better, if you can get your audience to feel something, that is content that is going to resonate. That is content that's going to potentially go viral. That is content that will drive business to you. You will get people wanting to work with you. You will get people wanting to be around you. You will get people wanting to come to your events. You will get people that want to do all sorts of things in your business and in your relationships. Hell, you could do this on dates and you will get dates. I'm telling you, if you are willing to allow yourself to bring in emotionality and have somebody feel something, it is a superpower. It is an absolute superpower to business and to relationships. And that is my entire concept of Mad Genius. That is the science behind Mad Genius. And that's why I share it with you.
Awesome. Well, Reef, thank you so much for your time. We normally end on 2 quick questions. One, a book or film that's had a huge impact on you or changed your life, and why?
You know, I could go with more like philosophical films, or I could do, but you know, I've got you can see it back there. I am a big Gladiator fan, and I just watched it. You know, my 4-year-old son, we cut out, you know, we covered his eyes on a few parts, but for the most part, I love the story, the underdog story, and the story of redemption. And I love the underdog story. I felt like I've been an underdog in my life, and I always root for the underdog and I cheer the underdog. If there's anybody I ever meet that I get the chance to work with who's coming from a place of the underdog, who wants to really shine, I just love it. So I would say Gladiator has been probably the biggest thing from a film perspective.
Time to flip the mic.
What do you hope to truly get out of having this podcast for specifically the listeners out there to change in their life. So not just, hey, this is an informational podcast, or this is a place for Cameron to be expressive, or this is a place to interview interesting people. What do you most want the people that are watching and listening to get out of this podcast universally?
The question you're asking is really why I started the podcast in the first place. You know, there's so many conversations like I have like now with yourself that would happen behind closed doors, and I would tell like a little bit to someone and they'd be like, oh, tell me more. But there's never the space and time to do that. And we're people working in the human performance space or trying to accelerate their own human performance. There's just this like plethora of information out there, and we're constantly taking snippets and little bits and often using those concepts in a fashion that doesn't hold justice to the original idea. So the original idea was to put a shining light on someone's work, on someone's idea, so people could get a much better idea about it without being put off of thinking, I've got to spend 3 days digesting this information in order to use it. So I'm hoping to give people a wider toolkit, to be brave, to use different methodologies, different ideas, different points to, I guess, to disrupt how they might ordinarily come towards accelerating human performance. So they can not only, you know, grow their own breadth of knowledge and wisdom, but the people that they're working with.
Okay, I like it. I like it. Instead of snippets, we get the whole picture. Great. And I just love to let your audience know, again, I love the, you know, helping people to shine their light. So I'll give you a couple ways to access me or access my stuff. If you're interested in the Master the Madness program, which is going to be launched this year, it's masterthemadness.com. Pretty simple. If you're interested in the Mad Genius program, which is for business, about how to tell your story, how to discover your story, and how to learn to perform your content so that you get people to feel an emotion that you're bringing out of yourself.
And we'll certainly put that in the show notes. All right. Bye for now.
Okay. Thank you.
Flow Unleashed.
There's so many nuggets to take from this conversation. The biggest one, however, for me, is that our mental health is not just dysfunction and impairment. It's also about how satisfied we are, how much meaning we have, and whether we are powered by passion, and how connected we feel. These are all determinants of a happier and more connected life. The stress, fear, tech overstimulation, social comparison, validation seeking, divided attention, decision fatigue, ads preying on our vulnerability, and corporate influences all culminate to living in an often toxic culture when we do not protect our innate energy. And Dr. Reef Kareem believes most people are stuck in a life of conformity as a result, unable to tell their story. Consequently, they suffer the personal consequences of feeling uninspired, unexpressed, and unrealized, and the mental health symptoms that go along with not operating from a place of meaning, curiosity, and creative vision. Something I'm sure we can all relate to, whether momentarily or indeed making up our daily reality. I challenge you, therefore, how can you express your inner madness today? Thanks for listening to Flow Unleashed. If you want to learn more about flow, I've recently published my book, How to Find Flow, with Blink Publishing. In it, I guide readers through Ready, Steady, Flow, 3 simple steps for high performance, resilience, and personal well-being. You can find the link to my book in the podcast description. If you like this episode, please subscribe, and the next episode will effortlessly drop into your playlist. Bye for now.